Was a statement made recently where this person said that they collect old clothing, and that I am totally wrong about thinking that these stripes that I see in my picture could have really existed in this vest that is in the Pioneer Memorial Museum. And so they're convinced that this vest was completely black and just had flowers. But I did obtain stock photos from the Pioneer Memorial Museum. I flew out there and stayed in a hotel back in 2019 just to take photos of the vest. And so I took a ton of photos of it, but the stock photo we did include in our paper. But it's really low DPI, unfortunately. The original is not low. And so when you look at the original stock photo, you see it's actually, there are a couple of things that are really interesting, is that there are flowers and then there's this U shape kind of. I don't know if that's just a reference, maybe at the steamship, maybe they had those things that they throw overboard to, stop hold the ship in place if it was a U shape. I don't know that much about boats, but it's just a U shape, and then there are snake things. And as you get to the edge, it does get darker like that. And the idea that he had a perfectly unworn vest, I think, is a little bit reaching to think that it didn't already have damage when he was alive, because I have so many, I've definitely read eyewitness accounts that Joseph Smith's jacket was worn, had holes in it, because this person was a young kid, but he kept hearing Joseph Smith was just too rich and had too much money, and he's like, I sat behind him and I saw the holes in his jacket, and just, especially then if you have like 30 wives, like you're passionately hugging and kissing, like it's gonna wear your vest and whatever happened, right? So, but this is where I originally found it, and you can see near the edge that there are areas that definitely have like that cross stitching, but she's sure that the whole thing looked like that, probably from looking at this sample. They think the whole thing was just blacked out, kind of like the forward-facing painting. He has this black jacket, but it's definitely a totally different shape of jacket. It doesn't look like this, but this looks like it was very open in my picture. And so I'm just going to show you some of the photos I took, and then of course I got the stock photo, and then there's the vest. So this is just to show you really, I can just zoom in and show you all this. So as I was looking at this collar, it definitely looks like this was worn and that they didn't manipulate it. Otherwise this would have been gone. So this is probably the effect of having a scarf underneath it that was bunched up, because he'd put it all the way up to over his jawline, and it was in style to have it pop down in the 1840s. And something I noticed just from looking at the Ensign article was that there was kind of this swoop shape, and I noticed this, do you see this shape right there? And that there are darker lines, and then there are shapes on this vest. That's why I pointed out many times it was brocade, so there was a design on top of it. So I'm just going to show you up close some of the pictures I have. Not all of them are going to be very clear. There you can see the U shape. It's faint. You can see it better in the stock photo, because this was like almost on the bottom shelf. They wouldn't take it out, and one woman almost wouldn't let me take photos, and then even though I had called before I showed up, it was real interesting. So I think it's very likely that it was worn here, but not so much on the outside, and maybe still had more cross stitching. I'll click on the ones that I named, because those are probably the clearer ones. So what you actually do have is quite a design, but it's not black. When you zoom in, you can see the blue, and it actually goes underneath. I do agree and think that this was an underneath design, and it definitely is worn. But I theorize it was worn before he died, that it worn down. He had holes in his clothes, according to witnesses, right? His clothes were worn. he went into bankruptcy because of, he had the made ship, this Maid of Iowa ship, but he had another one that sunk. And that's really what put him into bankruptcy before he died. Because it was a bad ship right away, and then it sunk right away. And they went to trial and tried to get their money back and couldn't. So there is a lot of black on top of it, but it's not blacked out. So I don't think it was blacked out. I do think he was hugging, like 30 women. So and just anyone he met, his clothes were just worn out. But yeah, I'll click on these ones on the top, or must be the ones that were the clearest, because it was really, really hard to get a good clear. This is really good. So you can see they've got this, it's a design, it's not blacked out. And so there are areas where it does look like, okay, there's thread that's black and just going across here, but where it's really well preserved right there, it's not blacked out, and it's still showing through some of these lighter colors. But you're seeing this shape, and that's a U shape. So basically it goes flower, U shape, snake thing. It's got design underneath it, but it's got colors that will just, through a sheen. Other pictures I've seen also of brocade, which I did research. I'm not lazy. I definitely researched brocade and wanted to have more detail in our paper. But I think these colors did shine through when the light hit it. But when it was definitely darker and light wasn't hitting it, it did look black right there, right? And this side's a little bit more blown out, but you can see darker patches on this, and definitely on this side. You can see the light's hitting there. It almost doesn't look striped on this side. It looks very brocade. There's a lot of design going on there. So I did look up brocade. I mean, I'm not collecting brocade vests. Apparently, maybe this person does, and says that they always look like stripes when they worn out. I don't know. But to say that it was in perfect shape before he died, or before this photo was taken and not worn already, is a total falsehood, because a lot of people said his clothes were not in good shape in Nauvoo. He wasn't always wearing very nice clothes that were in perfectly great shape. And so I'll just go to our paper to see the stock photo. We've also got the Ensign article. So as I was looking at this and upping the contrast, and you can see here the contrast isn't up so much and is a little bit farther away, but you really do see right in the center is a design. To me, it almost looks more like that black U shape, whereas the flowers would have been blown out, I think. I think the flowers would have been more blown out. But I can see that there's a design, especially this curve. That was really what I was like, oh, can we put that in the paper? And, I didn't write the paper. So they just said, oh, well, it looks like it's a striped vest. This looks like a striped vest. And I'll just maybe click on a few other pictures just for fun. There's the Ensign article. We can see a little bit more towards the collar here. So since I took the photos of this, you can see the U-shaped flower, and then it's got a lot of white designed into it too. So it's not just black stitching. They've got white stitching, but the white you do see is underneath, but if it didn't have, we don't know what was right here too. It continues blue, white, a little bit of black, or a little bit of a mystery. So what I did do was I took some photos. Oh, this one turned out pretty good. And so the white extends, but as you look, like especially right there, like that is not blacked out. You can still see blue. So it really wasn't stitched over with so much black that it blacked it out. It wasn't, I'm sorry person, but it wasn't a black vest. Although in the forward facing painting he has a black vest. And here's underneath, but underneath, I thought it would maybe be better. I'm like, maybe it's preserved. So I crawled on the floor and I took photos underneath, and it was worse. You know, it just, the whole thing, I think it got way worse since the 70s, since they took some photos. In the 1970s, I'm sure they took it out, but this was Melissa Lott. It had her maiden name on the card, and I searched it to see. I'm going to look for where the card is. Yeah, these are all really up close. I think that's where the card. So this brocade vest belongs to Joseph Smith. It was given by his wife to Melissa Wiles, and her maiden name was Lott. So this is what Melissa Lott had. And I do strongly have the opinion that I've been attacked about the photo by certain people that don't want to believe Joseph Smith lived polygamy. Because this is strong. If my photo is him, and this vest really was in the possession of Melissa Wiles, Melissa Lott Smith, or whatever she went by, that's some strong evidence that there was a relationship there. Of course, we have Eliza R. Snow's watch that has the etching JS to Eliza R. Snow. That's very personal and intimate, you know. And so there's that with the card, and you can see it just, the stitching just broke in half. And she might have held it, or I'm sure there was a lot of damage of her just keeping it in possession, or maybe putting it in piles of other things that she held on to. But they did trek quite a ways, and her husband died, her second husband died, that she did have children with. Am I clicking on the exact same one? And none of them are very clear, because I'm looking through a glass case sitting on the floor, and there's so much white reflecting from the very white floor. So it was really hard to get any photos that were very good, and it was a huge disappointment, I think, for Machi and Tegan when I emailed them these photos, and they're like, oh. And I'm like, well, the stock photo is okay, but the person that emailed me the stock photo said, well, you should come in person because the stock photo is not that great. So it was just, you know, a lot of disappointments all around. But you see, it's not blacked out. And especially right here, it looks like the stitching is preserved, and it still looks like you can see the blue and the lighter colors. And then if light is hitting it, and there's a lamp right next to him, it's going to show even lighter. So it really does appear. You see where it's well preserved? I'll end it right here, because you can see the stitching is actually, the cross stitching and all of this is well preserved right here. It looks like it's lighter, darker. And then this was still preserved on the seam. So I'm sorry, person, it wasn't blacked out, although it does show this, but I see that in the picture too. I definitely think that it's the same vest. I believe it's Joseph Smith, and I know people want to disprove it or just tell me I'm stupid and wrong. And they're smarter than me, and they're smarter than a forensic anthropologist. And we're all just stupid, you know. But also here's some, I didn't put this on my website because I don't own this photo, but these are some pop-down collars. It would sort of button in the front, and then, I mean, this is probably a very expensive one. It's clear Joseph's was just sort of hanging open. His doesn't look exactly like that. Here's another one, you know. This is almost all the way up and then slightly pops down. It almost appears like his was like that. They probably well starched it. So I'm going to keep this short because there's just no reason to just keep clicking on random photos. But there definitely was, this is probably the clearer one. U-shape, this design, it doesn't look blacked out. It's not a black vest. It definitely would sheen through and show the blue and the white and the different colors. And this had quite a design. There were lighter colors that went through. And so then when you see the actual stitching on the side, does that look blacked out? This is black. This is lighter. It goes black, lighter, black, lighter. So I believe this is how it would have shown up. And if you squint your eyes and if light is hitting it, it's going to look pretty striped, right? So if you look at my photo, you see that there's sort of that swoop design. I see some design on top of this, so I just really believe it is a brocade vest that's got sort of a stripe design underneath it. Very likely his vest got worn a little bit more in the middle than the outside, like that. So that is still my opinion. That's why I really focused on pointing out this is brocade and showing the different design of it, that there's a U shape and then there's the flower. The flower probably was really light and was blown out. So anyway, that's all I have for you today, and have a good day.